Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me on today's What Works Wednesday is Josh Raab, whose name you may or may not recognize. For those of you who read my book, Delivering Massive Value, will see Josh's name on there as I guess, Josh, what is your official title? Like editor, producer? I just call you like the guy that made the book a reality.
It's the guy that made the book a reality. No, it's editor, producers, or just publisher works too.
Publisher. I love it. Josh and I worked closely together for several months, as mostly on like it took longer on my side, but Josh like took all of these like ramblings that I had in these podcast episodes and these thoughts about a book and really organized them into a succinct what I think is a very good book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of my favorite type of project where a bunch of content is dumped on us and we have to sift through it and be like, what is this person's goal? Like, what are they really trying to push out into the world, and how can we present that in like a beautiful way?
I love it. I'd love to today, Josh, tackle we'll talk about lots of things, but tackle two main things. One, let's talk about creating books as far as the other advisors listening that are thinking, like, I'd like to create a book. What are some things to be aware of? But I also want to start off by talking about sometimes people like you and I are accused of charging a premium fee, like whether it's financial services or like everything financial services available online for free, free in quotation marks, and then kind of like everybody could self-publish for free. Again, we'll put that in quotation marks. Let's talk about like how you come to your market saying, hey, this is what I charge. Like I charge real money to do this work, and here's why it makes sense versus quote unquote free publishing.
Well, there's two things. Free always means if you're getting something for free, you're probably working for it too. So it's not technically
Yes,
free. Like, sure, you can
never.
self-publish, but it's not free because if your time's worth anything, you're putting money in. And it's the same as with investing. You can use all the apps and do all the research yourself, but that's not free. Um, so so there's that part that there's still work involved even when it's free,
I love that.
and then there's the other element that it's kind of related, but you're just busy. So you're really paying somebody for the service of the confidence that it's getting taken care of. And while there are certainly cheaper book people, uh, as is the same with cheap financial advice, financial advice, like you get what you pay
Yeah.
for. And so when people are putting their faces on things, they tend to like to invest in that. And so we like to sell that you're buying confidence.
I like that. My confidence. I like those two angles that you said, right? Like it's never free. Like you're going to pay one way or another, right? So you're either going to pay someone to do it. In this case, Josh will pick on you. We're going to pay Josh to do it, or you're going to do the work yourself. So it's interesting as we're listening, right? Somebody says, "Hey, I could do that for free." Well, let's take a step back. Like, how many hours do you think it's realistically going to take you to do this? I loved, or something that didn't mention that came to my mind is quality. Like, could I have eventually maybe gotten a book out without your help? I'm going to say no, I would never have gotten it out. It would have just been stalled forever. But the quality, like I would have never got the pages organized and I never would have got the headings in place and things that I think on the surface, I think that's not a big deal. It can't be that hard. It is actually really hard. And there's a big difference between quality and a DIY.
Yeah, and it actually reminded me lately. I hired my own financial advisor, and that comes after
Nice.
years of like trying to do it myself. And I gave her all my stuff and just all mishkaboobled in this place and that place and this bank and that bank, and she kind of had to sift through it. And I was thinking about how the same happens with book publishing, where people try to self-publish, they make this crappy cover, they make this book full of typos, they publish it, and they're like, wait, this is junk. I need someone, and they bring that to me to then sift through. And so there's another correlation there.
Josh, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about advisors who are interested in creating their own book. So they maybe they read my book, they saw one of your other books, they've seen other books, and they say, "Man, I want to create a book." What's I don't say what warnings, but what kind of things do these people need to be thinking about if they're like, "Hey, I think I should do a book."
Well, if you think you should do a book, the first thing you should do is just start making content if you're not already, whether that's a blog or a YouTube or a podcast, because you'll really get a sense for your own voice. And so that's really the most helpful thing when someone comes to us is just like, hey, I've made some of this stuff. I feel like there's a book here. Versus, hey, I've never typed a word in my life. I've never made any content. And I don't know any, whip this, download my brain. So my advice would be to start making content as soon as possible. Get yourself on a writing schedule, writing once a week, twice a month, and that'll really get you going. Um, that'd be the first
That's a
step.
good that's a good point. I think it helped me a lot that I had already done a few dozen podcast episodes before we had started working together, and then I had been writing content for clients for a long time. But even still, like it was a lot of work to actually sit down and have a writing schedule and say, great, every week I need to knock out this much content.
Yeah.
It's because when I have my call with Josh, and the accountability was part of it. Like I know I have a call with Josh in 2 weeks, and if I get on that call and I tell him I don't have anything new, that I'm just wasting his time and I'm just running up the clock. It's not getting us anywhere.
Yeah, because there's nothing for me to really work on if there's nothing presented to me.
So Josh, as people are working on books with you on their own, where do you see books like stall and die? Like, where does this process most often hit a wall?
I think it most often hits a wall when people really get hung up on some little element they didn't expect. Like maybe it's turning out the littlest bit different or the book's taken a different direction. Because as you'll see, people start with an idea. They're like, this is the book I imagine. And then as it starts to come together, they realize that that's not really a book they're capable of writing, or that's just not where the process is going. And people will get really stuck trying to force it into this
Interesting.
mold where you're just like, no, a book is a reflection of you. Like, there's a lot of insecurity stuff that comes up where I'll get into projects that just go on forever and ever and ever. And then sometimes I have to be like, sorry, guys, like, come back to me when you feel good. Because
Yeah.
it gets super in their head. They get super psychological about it, and you start to run into actual roadblocks, and you're like, no. So, being open to the process and letting the book go where it goes is really helpful. One more
Oh,
thing is
well, please.
when people lose track of knowing who their audience is, who they're actually trying to
Oh,
talk to. If they're
interesting.
trying to make it like Harry Potter, even though it's a book about financial advising,
Yeah.
it won't work. So they have to really. We like to do three demographics at the beginning of projects now, where we say, okay, this is Hank. Hank lives in South Dakota. Hank runs this kind of
Yeah.
firm. Hank does this. And so anytime during the book writing, when you feel stalled, you're like, what does Hank want to hear right now? Does he want to hear this story I'm telling? Yes or no? And so
That's a
really
great
keeping your
idea.
eye on the goal and the audience is important.
That's a good reminder. I remember a couple of advisors that were content creators, like podcasts and whatnot, and they would have kind of their avatar. Some of them even had like a picture of a fake person, right? But they would look sort of as they imagine their avatar would look. All right, am I speaking to that person? Yeah, to your point, do they really care about this? Something that came up as you were mentioning these books stalling, Josh, is that similar. Like in financial services, we always tell people it's very difficult to be objective about your own money. I noticed when we were working on a book together, it was incredibly difficult for me to be objective about my own book because, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you get like married to the content and you need someone to tell you, like, hey, this story doesn't make sense here, or this needs to move along, or it's good enough, it has to go to publish. Thoughts on that about, I mean, how much of your job is just sort of being objective? I know there's a lot of nitty gritty, but how much of that's just being objective?
Objectivity is hard because sometimes I realize I'm being paid to troll people. Like people give me their life's work and I just go in the comments and I'm just like, nope, that doesn't work. Nope, no, not this.
That's
Um,
funny.
uh, Being objective, there's definitely a point when I realize things are getting, like I said, too psychological. So I have to be like, hey, this is as good as this is going to get, and that's where I get really objective. I'm just like, this
Mm.
is good enough. Don't let good be the enemy of, or perfect be the enemy of good.
Yeah, I like that. I know that you and I had some, I don't call it back and forth, but we had as we were going through these different iterations. And you mentioned earlier in this episode about like, it's never going to feel perfect as the author. I remember as we were wrapping up, and I think we even had a discussion of like, Josh, listen, I'm going to go back and rewrite every chapter. Like, we need to
Yeah,
rewrite the whole thing. And you're all, listen, you could do that. Like, if that's your dream, we need to just print, like, we'll do a second edition later. It's good. Let's go.
yeah. I was saying as you were asking about project that stalled, like our project together didn't stall, and also I wasn't annoyed because you were very self sufficient. You were just like, hey, I'm gonna rewrite this thing. I'm gonna add this thing. I'll be back to you in a couple weeks. You know, where there's a lot of people who are like, hey, I wrote half a paragraph. Can you read it? Do you think it could be a whole chapter? And there's a lot of that. Um, but yeah, there was definitely that time when the book was pretty large and I thought very comprehensive and good. And yeah, you were. I wonder what was going through your mind at the time when you were like, I don't know if this is exactly.
Yeah. Is this
'Cause-
even a book? Will anyone even read it?
And that's the
Yeah,
insecurity that comes up at the
it
end, right when you're
is.
about to press print, and you're like, wait, is this is forever? Like this gets put on someone's shelf forever. I
Yeah.
can't go back and edit it. It's not a live Google Doc.
It's I think whether it's the book or really anything else in life, telling a lot of other people what you're up to helps. Like there was this little part of me that when the books arrived, like this creative books arrived at my office, the physical book, for one second I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna leave these all in the box. Like I'm not gonna unbox it. I'm not gonna actually like just that head trash. Is like I don't want anybody to actually see this thing, and now they're gonna see it. But I had already told so many people, there were so many wheels in
Yeah.
motion. I had to. But yeah, you need forcing mechanisms. Like what's gonna keep you down the creative process?
Since the very start of my publishing journey, I still, when I get my first box of books after a book's published, I close my eyes and I open the box with my
Yeah.
eyes closed and I put my hands in and I just touch it and I'm just remind myself, like, even if there's a typo, even if something looks weird, like, it's okay. I did my best. It's just a book.
Yeah, and there will, as you know better than I do, there will be typos. There's one typo in the book that everybody notices, and like
Oh
every
no.
single person reaches out to me and they're like, Jarvis, I don't know if you noticed this, but on page whatever, there's this one typo. It's like everybody, that'll be all your friends initially. Like instead of telling you that they love the book or they learned something, like, oh, this is on page 37. There shouldn't have been a comma there.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I'll give you a full refund.
Yeah. Well, this brings up an interesting point as a professional advisor. Like at no point in our work together did you ever say to me, "Hey Jarvis, listen, your book will be absolutely perfect. There will not be a word out of place. There will not be a typo." Like you set that expectation up front. Hey, listen, we're going to go through this multiple times, but something will still slip through. And I think that's important for us as professional advisors, your field or mine. Like we have to manage the expectation. This will not be a perfect product. Like these are still people involved. It'll be really damn good. It's not going to be a perfect product.
Yeah, we'll do our best. It's a little bit of like, but it's also a little bit of just, it's actually honest. You know, it's like we're gonna, I have my heart in this and my brain in this, but yes, very human.
I love it. I love it. So we talked earlier about um, getting in a habit of creating content. Any kind of sense on like how much content someone needs to create before they have enough to have a book? Like I felt like early on I thought, oh, in my soul there's this book, and I'm going to sit down at my computer, I'm going to type it out, and it'll be like this magical romantic thing. But it was really like a lot of work to get together enough content to fill the book.
Yeah, if I could just totally ballpark it, like if a client came to me and said, I want to do that, then you can make a book out of it. I would say, like, for me to get a really good sense of what's possible, 40 blog posts, probably 40 blog
I
posts
like
of
that.
content, 20 videos, and like 10 PowerPoint presentations. And those are like, that would be enough for me to be like, I can distill from this the lines that people keep repeating. And so if someone listening wants to write that down, once they hit that, they can hit us up for a book.
Yeah, I like that threshold because I have had people reach out to me and they say, "Oh, Jarvis, I loved your book. I want to write my own book. Can I call your publisher?" I'm like, well, his name's on there. Like, and Josh did an amazing job, but are you sure you're at that stage? Well, I've thought about it for a long time. Have you written anything down? Kind of Josh, to your point, like, have you done 40 blog posts on this topic? This book isn't going to materialize. Like, Josh does great work, but he's not like a psychic. Like, he can't just like grab your head and pull this book out.
It's also important people understand or have some experience with what they actually want their content to do for their business. You know, it's about, it could be for networking, it could be to make money on the book itself. We just had a client who they're a startup, and the CEO made a passionate book, and he didn't really know why he was making a book, other than he wanted a book and liked book and had a lot to say. And then he started handing it out to people, and he was at a conference, and some lady from Johnson and Johnson, they're a procurement company,
Yeah.
he was like, he didn't really know who she was, and he handed her the book, and he was like, yeah, here's my book, I don't know. And then Johnson and Johnson hit them up like 2 weeks later, signed them up to use their software for
Oh,
procurement.
jeez.
He was also
Yeah.
at that conference, and the CEO of GE read his book and was like, I want to do an intro for your next book, for your next edition. And he
Wow.
did it, and then that guy's on his board now. And then all those people together, when they did a round of investment, they handed the book out to all the possible investors, and they raised $26 million in Series A funding. And they
Wow.
like used the book, and they were like, it's like a marketing pitch, except not marketing, right? Because it's from someone's heart, it's their story. And so back to the point about creating content, like, the only way you can know really what's in your heart in terms of your business and what you're actually spending your time doing is to just write a little bit, and then you'll start to see, hey, this sort of person likes it, this sort of person likes it. Oh, my book's for marketing, my book's for networking. Oh, I'm famous on social media now, I can just sell my book to my audience, or whatever it is. But really knowing what you want your book to achieve, well, it's kind of a version of manifesting.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, right? I guess it'd be easy to think like this is the holy grail. Like, I'll write this book and then any problems I have in life will be solved magically. But to your point, you've got to be really clear, even just for your own psyche. Like, hey, to your example, like, I just want to write this book because it's in my soul and I want to get out. And if I sell 5 copies, like, I've accomplished my goal. Like, that's what I just want to do. Okay, cool. That's one avenue. Or if you say I want to sell 10,000 copies, all right, that's a different avenue and it's a different approach and it's a different publishing and all that.
Yeah, we call it. And the first question I ask any new client is, "What are your professional goals? What are your personal goals?" Because they're totally
Interesting.
different. And a lot of people are like, "My personal goal is just to write a book," and I'm like, "Oh, this job's going to be easy then, because this person just, like you said, only cares if they sell 5 copies, or it doesn't really matter, right?" Or the professional side can be like, "I want it to be as big as Harry Potter," and you're like, "Well, there's going to be some issues." Or it can just be like, I go to lots of conferencing events and I want to hand out a book instead of a business card with my story. And you're like, okay, now I know that you're pitching your project, you're pitching your company or whatever it might be, and it's just a lot clearer going forward from there.
I like those lead-in questions. Like I'm trying to reflect back when you and I first started speaking, right? And it wasn't like this discussion. I'm trying to tie this back to financial planning. You didn't say to me like, Jarvis, guess what? I published this many books and they sold this many copies and I have this many awards. Like you really jumped into tell me why you're writing a book. Tell me what success will look like. Why is this passionate to you? And I think again, same thing for financial planning. If I jump right into like, hey, we have this many assets and we do these things and look at these awards on
Yeah.
the wall, but I miss like, hey, why do you have this money? The whole thing's out the door.
Yeah, like what does it mean to you? What do you care about investing in? What do you hope it brings you later? It's the same.
I love that. Josh, any thoughts or tips that come to mind for, in addition to creating content for people that are thinking about a book, like just anything else that we should be thinking as we're talking to them or as they're listening to this episode, getting ready to reach out to you? And it could really just be that like you've got to get these 40 blog posts done, whether it's a blog post or a podcast episode, like you've got to get in the content creation mindset. I'm just wondering if
You've
anything else
got it.
comes to mind for you.
Yeah, I think that a routine is really important. Like that's kind of getting yourself in the writer's routine, but like really setting yourself a schedule so that you're constantly thinking up new ideas, because it's really hard to go from 0 to 60 in terms of writing a book. Your brain really has to be in that place where you're like constantly coming up with ideas. I think that reading a lot of books and even talking to people who have published books and seeing all the thousands of ways that books can help your business, so that you get a good sense of what's possible and you're not coming at it fully from like a psychological ego place of I just want a book, because those tend not to be very good and to be
Yeah, yeah,
troublesome projects. And of course read a lot, really understand.
yeah.
It's best when someone comes to us with, hey, I've read these 5 books, like changed my life. And at the beginning of our process, we'll
Oh,
usually
sure.
buy those books for a client and read them and
Yeah.
be like, okay, this is what this person likes. Like, hey, they said they want this book to be this version of what's that book? The Art of Selling? No, the I forget it, but
But yeah, if you have a book you love,
whatever it
it might
is,
give
like
you
if you
something to
get an
work off.
example book, it's really helpful because it gets everyone on the same page. So reading a lot's always good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I hear similar things in every content platform, right? So my good friend Benjamin Brent, who's got a great podcast, he says the same thing. Like, set your day of the week that you do podcasts, listen to other podcasts, find a successful one that you like, and just mirror what they're doing. Don't plagiarize, but he said, "Well, I like that format. Cool, then follow that same format, right? Whether it's 30 minutes or the intro or whatever they do."
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So,
In
just to kind of go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, in music production, it's called a reference track. And so
Oh,
when you have a
interesting.
couple beats and a couple stuff put together, and you don't know what you're doing with it, you're just like, I don't know where my head is with this. You put a reference track on the top, and you see just the waveform, and you say, okay, they had a chorus
Interesting.
here, a verse here, a chorus here, a verse here, and you just mash your song to match how
Huh.
that reference track looks, and it's a totally different song, but you just have that as like
Interesting.
a framework to build what you're doing, and it's the same with what we're talking about
That's
in
interesting. I
terms of
wasn't aware of that, but
picking a book and being like, hey, I
yeah.
like how this was in 5 sections. I like how they had lists at the end of every chapter. I like how they use graphics, and you're like, let's do that, and it really helps bring clarity.
Yeah, it really boils down to do what works. I didn't know that. Never done anything in music production, but having a reference track. But it's a great point, right? Whether it's a book or a song or a coaching program or a business, like who has a model that I like that really works, and then how do I adapt that to my style? That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, it's really fun to have you on the show. It was great fun to work together to create the book. How can people that are listening learn more about you, about book publishing in general, but specifically more about you?
If you go to rabandco.com, RAAB and co.com, we got a bunch of information and case studies up there with other people we've worked with, your beautiful book, and all your lovely reviews. and we'd love to talk.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, if you're looking for a reference track, you can of course buy my book that Josh and I
There
made
you go.
together, Delivering Massive Value, and you can let them know like I love this and I really didn't like Jarvis in it. So like if you could do this minus Jarvis, that would be
Yeah, and
great.
I will forward all those comments to Jarvis directly.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Well, Josh, thanks so much for your time. Thanks again for all your help creating that book. It's really been a lot of fun. It blew my mind that it sold out so quickly, and we're working on with you right now on doing a second edition. So
You guys have been doing a killer job. It's been so impressive to watch that thing sell.
it's a lot of fun. Well, Josh, thanks so much for your time, and for all our listeners, happy planning.